Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back for another lunchtime WP Quickies. So bite-sized WordPress tips and tricks in 30 minutes or less. So please leave a comment in the comments below. Let me know who's tuned in today and where you're from. Hopefully you guys are having a nice sunny day like we are here in Sydney. It's probably the warmest it's been for quite a while. So today's topic is on redirecting old content, and this topic has been suggested by Kerry Haywood. So Kerry, I hope you're joining in today. If not, of course, this is all recorded on YouTube, so you guys can watch this back at your leisure. So yeah, please drop a comment below and just let me know who's tuned in today and where you guys are from. That would be great. Before you do that, before we get started, please remember to click on the subscribe button down below and click on the bell as well, just so you're notified when I go online for the next. But I'm trying to do these every Thursday at 1 p.m. Sydney time. So we've got some more things queued up in the meetup page for you over the next few weeks. So thanks very much, guys, for all your suggestions as well. If you want to suggest a topic for consideration, fill out the little form below. There's a link in the description underneath the video here, and yeah, I'll get that. Have a look at them, see if we can queue up some more topics for the next few weeks. That'd be great. Okay, so this one, I want to dive into this one today. There's not an awful lot to cover, but I just want to talk about a little bit more about redirection, because it does come up every so often. Oh, here we go. We've got some of the comments coming through just now. Mr. Meowpoos, hi. Another regular viewer. Good to have you online. Joey as well. Joining from Singapore as always. I wonder what the weather's like in Singapore. Hopefully it's a little bit warmer than it is here in Sydney. Oh, I watch another person watching from Oz, Australia. Not quite sure how to pronounce your first name. Bhupinder, is that correct? Hopefully I haven't done that injustice. Mrs. Matthews, checking in from Sydney. Thank you so much. Daniel from Sydney. Paul as well. Paul's another regular viewer, regular watcher. And we have you as well from Sydney. So we've got some Sydney crew and Singapore crew in today. That's great, guys. Super. Okay, let's get into this. Okay. So I'll circle back to some questions. If you've got some questions, please pop them down in the comments, and I'll circle around the questions towards the end of the presentation, unless something comes up that's interesting along the way, and then we can do that. Bhupinder, excellent, I got it right. Hey, woohoo. Okay, so I've done the subscribe one. Okay. All right, let's get into content redirection. So what is content redirection? I'm sure you guys all know what it is, but just to kind of wind it back, to go back to the basics. A redirect is a way for your web server to tell your visitor's web browser that the page they've tried to access has a different location. And when I say location, I really mean the URL of the single page. Okay, so each URL that you access on a website is totally unique on the internet. So that's what I'm meaning by a location. So it's quite common for website owners to change locations of pages, particularly after perhaps a site redesign or a website content audit, or just to get better SEO results. And so pages and URLs, pages, posts, articles, so things move all the time. But why do we need to redirect the content anyway? So, of course, if you move your web pages around, you want your website visitors to be able to still access that information at the new location. But mostly, redirects are in place to tell Google to update its index for your site so that you don't lose any SEO rankings that old content already had. So you really want to avoid picking up 404 not found errors, because that's going to damage your overall SEO score, as well as losing credibility with your audience as well. So definitely you want to be looking at your Google Search Console and your Google Analytics, because that's the place that tells you where your 404 errors are. And if you have 404 errors, then that's the time to look at doing some content redirection and redirect it to somewhere else, so you're not generating those errors all the time. So different types of redirection. Now, mostly people will use a 301 and maybe a 302, mostly 301, because when you move something, you usually move it and that's it, it's completely moved. But there are actually quite a lot of different types of redirect. So 301, that's the most common one that people use, and that means that this URL has been moved permanently. It's not going to change. It's not going to move back to where it was. It's a permanent change. But there's other codes as well. So 302, 302 is moved temporarily. So sometimes if we are just testing things out, or just moving something from one direction to somewhere else while we'll change something and then move it back, then we can tell Google that that's a 302. It's a temporary redirect. And what it tells Google is it says don't cache, don't index that final URL, because it's just a temporary move, and it's going to go back to the original one. So you can certainly use 302 if you're changing original content and you don't want people to see that. You maybe have like a holding page, and then you move it back to when you've redesigned that particular page or article. Now we had 303. 303 it's a bit like 302, but what it tells Google is it says never ever cache anything that returns a 303 error. Okay, so Google, if it gets a 303 error, it's just going to go, okay, well, I'll just give you that, and I'm not going to update my index or cache anything. There's a 304. 304 means not modified. Sometimes that's used for download links. So when you download assets like PDFs or pictures, it's a way to tell the browser that not to, or the server not to transmit any more resources. I've already given you it. You've had it. Just you've got it now. That's it. Don't ask me for it anymore. 305. 305 is if you're using a proxy service, and it basically tells Google that to use that proxy, and it's only available via that proxy. A proxy is like a different machine that you route through to get a particular resource. 307, that's a temporary redirect. It's like 302, but it's used for things like A/B testing. So when you're showing visitors particularly one bit of content and another bit of content, and you're trying to figure out which one converts the best. So 307 is used in that context to tell Google that this is you're doing these kind of different URL testing and not to build an index with. So don't index that, don't cache it, don't put it towards the site index. And 308, it's like 301, it's a permanent redirect. 307 and 308, they're like 301 and 302, except things like methods, the way you get the information, the way you ask the server for that information or give it to them, can't change. So what I mean by methods is getting a little bit technical here, but when you're asking a server to do stuff, there's 4 basic methods. You use post, get, put, patch, and delete. That's 5, isn't it? So if you're using 307 or 308, then you can't change that. If you use a post, you've got to use a post to get the next URL. Whereas if you're using 301 and 302, you can mix and match those different post, get, put, patch, and delete requests. But let's forget all of those. Let's just focus on 301, move permanently, because that's where the majority of people code is going to use. And that's what we're going to focus on for the next few slides. Okay, so redirecting moved WordPress content. So we'll take a look at some of the ways to do that. And that should cover most instances for most websites and most owners. The first method is using a plugin, of course. We've got WordPress, so why not use some plugins to do it? It's the easiest way, it's the simplest option. This one here is the plugin called Redirection, and I'll pop the link in if I can get this. There we go. Pop the link in the comments below. It's fairly simple. It's pretty easy to use. It has a couple of options. So one option is it records your 404, that's your not found errors. So you can set that as an option to do. So within the plugin, you'll see all your 404 errors, which is pages not found, and then you can then set up a redirection for them. But you don't have to use that. You can use Google Search Console to find the 404s. But the main reason for the plugin is to be able to quickly and easily manually set up 301 permanent redirections. So you've got an old target, and then you've the old source, and then you've got a new target to go to. So using a plugin for redirection means that the website owner doesn't have to muck around with any kind of web server configurations or files or settings. So this plugin works nicely with Apache and Nginx, which is probably the two most widely used web servers for those. So let's have a look at this example. I might make it a little bit bigger just so you guys can see properly. So the above example here, hopefully it looks a little bit, hopefully that's a little bit clear. This example, it's a simple plain text redirection. It redirects the URL /chicken-wings to the URL /super hot finger licking chicken wings. Now, because the redirection starts with a slash, then that means that it's relative to the domain name for that website. Okay. Now, if you're directing content to a new domain name, you would of course enter the full URL, including HTTPS, into the second target URL field. Now, this method here, I'll just bring myself back online. This method here, it works fine for a per page basis, okay? So if you're just redirecting a single page or a single resource, then this works really, really well. But what happens if you're moving a whole load of pages, like in a hierarchical content? What happens if you change a category, or if you have sub-pages and you change the parent page? Well, for this, you're going to have to learn a little bit about regular expressions. Regular expressions. So here we have an example of regular expressions here. Hopefully you can see that a little bit clearer. I'll make it a little bit bigger. So regular expressions, it's a set of rules that allow you to define parts of, and in this case, a URL, and use them in the redirection. So the example here, it's redirecting all subpages of chicken wings to the new URL, super hot finger licking chicken wings. And the way it does that, hopefully you can see that. It looks a little bit blurred in here, but hopefully that's okay on the URL. So the first part here, the source part, it's got a little caret sign, which is usually the shift and 6. And that means that anything that happens before, so all your stuff before /chicken wings, that's what it's looking for. So it's something that starts with chicken wings. So your domain name would be https yourdomain.com/chicken wings. That's what it's looking for. That little caret means the start of. And then at the end, it's got a parenthesis with a dot and an asterisk. And that means that anything that comes after the /chicken wings, it's going to group that together. So that's your source URL. That's your regular expression for that. And we can see how it's used in the target URL. So what we're saying is you want to map or redirect the chicken wings onto super hot finger licking chicken wings and all the sub pages under it as well. So on the target URL, we can see at the end of that URL, there's a parenthesis, and inside you've got a $, and then a 1. And what that means is it's using the first group that's in a parenthesis from your source target. And you want to bring in all of that stuff and put it onto the target URL. And what this is doing is any sub pages, so anything that's after /chicken wings /, it is going to lift that and just put it into where that bracket $1 is. So really, if you change your parent page from chicken wings to super hot finger licking chicken wings, then all your sub pages are just going to get mapped onto that new URL. So it's the easiest example I could think about and coming up and trying to introduce you to regular expressions. Regular expressions, it can take you quite a while to learn. Sometimes they've got quite a high learning curve. But for the most part, you can Google particular use case examples, and 99% of the time, someone has already found a solution for that. So you can just copy the source and the target URL for your particular case. So definitely, if you're thinking about doing a lot of moving our content around, then regular expression is going to be quite important for you to learn, I think. Okay, what do we have here? Yep, so this is just the example again of that regular expression using the plugin. So at the top, we've got the adding the new direction, and then once it's added, we can see that it's added in as an actual 301 redirect at the bottom of the plugin. Okay, so but sometimes you might not want to use a plugin, or you can't use a plugin, or it doesn't work. So there are other ways of redirecting your content. So you can do that manually. So here's an example for Apache servers. So if your web server is Apache, then it uses a file called .htaccess, which is usually in your public HTML folder, so your root folder where your wp-config.php is. Open up that. You should have one there. If you don't, you can create a new one, but you should have one for there. Open it up, and if you want to add redirections, then towards the bottom of the file, so after all the stuff who's already in there for WordPress, then you can add these 3 lines of code. So the first line of code, if module mod_rewrite.c, so that basically says if Apache already has a module inside that handles rewrites, then and you put your bit of code in the middle. And I've put that example that I was using before with chicken wings. So the particular Apache code is rewrite, and then you've got that little carrot with chicken wings. You've got your regular expression, but with a dollar on the end this time. And then you're redirecting it to super hot finger-licking chicken wings with your $1, which is your parameter. And at the end, there's little square brackets, and it tells Apache that that's a redirect, a 301 redirect. So you can Google Apache and .htaccess and rewrite rules, and there's a whole help page that'll tell you exactly how to set those up for your particular cases. If you're using Nginx, it's a little bit different. You actually have to go into the Nginx server block, and that's a system configuration, and you might not have access to that. So your web host provider might not give you access to play around with the Nginx server. But if you do, if they do, then this is the way to do it. So it's very similar to Apache. So within the server block, you've got your server name, and there's the rewrite rule there. Pretty much the same format as the Apache one, just a little bit different syntax. So you can definitely do it manually by editing your server files, but of course, plugins a lot easier to do. Okay, so let's get into quickly just redirecting your removed and deleted content. So sometimes when you're doing a content review, when you're looking at the content on your website, sometimes you'll just find that the SEO for some of the pages is just rubbish. No one's visiting it. Google's indexed it on page 1 billion. And it's just rubbish. And it might have been relevant 5-6 years ago, but it just isn't relevant to your site anymore. So in this case, I don't want you to feel bad about just removing the content. If the SEO is rubbish and it's not relevant to your website and there's nothing you can do to revive it, then just get rid of it. Because it'll be dragging your overall website SEO score down. So yeah, please don't feel bad about deleting old content. If it's completely insignificant, if it's not getting any hits or views, then just trash it. Because the worst thing you can do is have lots of really rubbish content that Google's indexing and saying that's low quality, and you don't want that because that will affect your overall SEO score. So don't feel bad about deleting old content that's absolutely rubbish for your website. However, sometimes you might have to retire content or repurpose content that's still getting a little bit of SEO goodness. So for example, stuff that's contained within PDF files. Since 2006, I think it was, Google started indexing PDF files, and they can add a huge amount of SEO goodness to your website. So removing like a single PDF file, that could actually damage your overall SEO backlinking. Because people do link to PDF files, for examples. And so if you move a PDF file, then you're going to get lots of 404 errors, links that don't work. That's something called link rot. And again, we don't want that because it's bad for the user experience and it's bad for Google as well, your Google SEO score. So in this case, if you've got like lots of PDFs or you've got lots of content, I would recommend that you have a look at that content, refactor, rewrite the content and give it a more relevant spin to where your current site is just now. You know, because if it's getting traffic, then you want to keep that traffic, but then you want to repurpose that and make it more useful for people to read. So definitely repurpose that, rewrite your content, respin it, and create a new page or post, and let's split it up into smaller topics. That's what I like to do. So when I'm looking at my old content, I like to see where I was trying to go and trying to make it more relevant and better experience for where my brand, where my image, where my website is just now. And I tend to do that by creating the overall topic, and I'll create that as something called a cornerstone article and give a brief overview as to what it is, and then spin off into smaller sub-articles that gives more depth to that particular topic. Like a table of contents, really. You've got your introductory article, which is your top one, and then you spin off into a more in-depth for each topic in a separate post of its own right. And then you redirect that old page, that old PDF to that new cornerstone article, so that people who are looking to that can then spin quite nicely, easily into this new article that you've went more in depth to. You've given a better spin, a better focus on where it is for your brand and for your website. So that's what I would do for the moving old content or redirecting or repurposing stuff that's still getting a good amount of SEO traffic. But in particular, I want to talk a little bit about PDFs because that was the particular focus for this topic. Now, PDFs, you can redirect them using the redirect plugin. However, I've come across some issues where if it's not an Apache and it's not an Nginx web server, if it's a different type of server, then sometimes that plugin doesn't work with PDF files. So for some web servers, PDF files are treated a little bit differently. And your web server just says, here's a PDF file, there you go, you have it. And it ignores the kind of rewrite rules. So if that's happening in your case, then there's a couple of tricks for doing that. First of all, you can always try the manual 301 redirects for the servers, the htaccess file or the server block, if your web server is compatible with that. But if you don't have that option, then there is another trick that I can show you how to redirect PDF files. And this will work for any type of file, but in particular, PDFs. Okay. So there's a few steps to do here. So step one is to take your old PDF file and either rename it or remove it from your server. Now, you really need to do that because in the next step, you're going to understand why. So the very first step, remove your old PDF file by deleting it from the server or renaming it to something else. Step two, you're going to create a new folder. So create a new folder in the exact same location with the exact same name of the old PDF file. And yes, folders can have dots in them. So for example, if you had an old PDF file called 2019-productslist-PDF, then get rid of that and create a new folder in that same location called 2019-productlist-PDF. So a folder, exact same name as the PDF. The next step is you want to create a file within that folder, so inside that folder called index.php. Now, index.php, it's the very first file that your web server will open if somebody browses to the URL that is that directory. Okay, so normally the person is looking for the PDF file, but we've renamed that to a URL, to a directory. And when a web server opens that directory, it's going to open by default this index.php file. So that's a step 3. The last step is we're going to use a little bit of code, a little bit of PHP code, and we're going to drop in these 4 lines here. So bracket and a question, that should be a question mark PHP, sorry. And then header, that basically says HTTP request 301, this is moved. And then the next line is a location, a colon, a space, and then your new URL to where your new content lives. So this is a little trick that I've used on some client web servers that haven't been Apache or Nginx. It works very well, and it's just another way of being able to redirect a PDF file if they're not allowing you to redirect using that plugin, or if you've got like a weird web server setup from that one. So again, it allows you to redirect your old PDFs to something new, a new article, a new post, a new cornerstone article for that. So here we are. That's it. That's the content redirection I want to cover today. So just a few bits of conclusion. So we use redirects to keep SEO goodness. We redirect after things like site restructures or an SEO audit. Try and use a plugin. It's a lot easier than mucking around with .htaccess. And rather than delete stuff, have a look to see first if you can maybe repurpose that into multiple new articles, and then put it into like a main cornerstone article that you can link your old content to, and then hopefully that'll retain the SEO juice. It'll keep new people interested in your content, kind of refresh your content. Okay, guys, let's have a look. If you guys got any questions, then yeah, please drop them in the comments below. This was a quick one today. So thanks, Kerry. So we've got John from Newcastle, Joshua from Sydney, Hitton from Sydney too, Rosalind's another regular viewer, as is Julia. Hi, guys. Oh, someone from the USA, Michael from the USA. Excellent. Thank you for joining all the way from the USA. It must be late or early there, I reckon. There we go. Yeah, that's great. Thanks for joining in. Okay, so next week, I'm doing something a little bit different. So I know it's just normally me chatting away to you guys, but I think, well, it'd be nice to have a Zoom hangout. So next week, we'll just do a little hangout together. So I'll invite you all to Zoom, and there's a Zoom link in the meetup. So if you go to the WordPress Sydney meetup, there's a link there, and there's a password as well, a passcode for that. It's just WPQuickies, all in lowercase. So you guys should be able to get in there fine. Oh, I do have a question here from Joey. For step 2, create a folder with the exact name of your old PDF file. Do we need to use the name of the PDF without the PDF? No, you need to use the .pdf. Yep. So if someone's linking to that PDF file, then that URL will include like your PDF file's name with the .pdf. So you want to create a folder that is the PDF name with the .pdf, because you're trying to trick it into the same, doing the same URL. Nyack, thank you so much. And Council for Intellectual Disability, great tips. Oh, you guys are welcome. Oh, thanks, John. Thank you so much. Okay, so again, if you guys want to send me in some topics, I'd love to hear from you guys as to what sort of WordPress quickie things you would like to hear. Fill out the form on the screen just now. It's a QR code that's also in the link below the video as well. So hit me up with some topics so I can queue them in for future quickies. That's me. So please contact me, get in contact with me on LinkedIn. And I'm on Instagram and Twitter as well. So if you want to ask any other questions, then please, DM me or hit me up in LinkedIn if you want to ask kind of some more complicated questions or some follow-up questions for that. So great. So thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. I know your time is precious, lunchtime doubly so. And I'll end it here for today and catch up with you next week. So thank you, guys, and goodbye.